While the world is fixated on artificial intelligence, satellites, and encrypted fiber networks, the US military keeps a trump card hidden in plain sight. Imagine this: a devastating cyber attack wipes out power grids, data centers, and satellites. The nation is blind, its leaders are cut off, and the nuclear triad, the very backbone of deterrence, hangs by a thread. But this wasn't the work of some rogue hackers. It was a coordinated strike by a hostile nation that's now beginning to make its moves. Meanwhile, deep beneath the oceans, ballistic missile submarines patrol in silence. Known as boomers, these subs carry world-ending nuclear firepower. Each captain waits for the unthinkable, a launch order. But with every other line of communication shattered, how does that message reach them? Well, what if I told you there exists a mission so unusual, so veiled in secrecy, that even seasoned aviators often struggle to describe it? And here's the thing, the aircraft that execute this mission aren't bombers, fighters, or even tankers, yet they may be the most important planes in America's arsenal. Their task isn't to drop ordnance or dogfight, but to serve as the last line of communications, an unbreakable link between the nation's leaders and the ultimate weapons of war. You see, for this message, the answer doesn't come from a ground tower. It comes from the sky. High above the clouds, an aircraft circles, dragging behind it a wire that's longer than the tallest skyscrapers stacked end to end. This wire turns the plane into something bizarre yet vital. A flying radio tower that's able to whisper a signal for thousands of miles and even beneath the waves. And if that signal can get through, civilization might just survive the night. Yet, here's the twist. The aircraft chosen for this mission carry the codename Phoenix, a name hinting at rebirth and resilience. But why would the Navy give it such a title? And what sort of operation would push air crews to deliberately fly on the knife edge of a stall? To answer that, we need to go back to the beginning. So strap in, grab those Morse code sheets, because it's time to take charge and move out. This is the Tacamo story. And stay tuned, because at the end of this video, I've got a special tribute that honors the legacy and bravery of these incredible crews. The Cold War wasn't just a race for missiles and bombers. It was a race to keep the chain of command unbroken. Nuclear deterrence depends on credibility. Submarines can hide, and they can strike back, but only if they can hear their orders. And in an era before satellites were reliable, that was no small problem. That's where Tacamo came in. Born in the 1960s, the program's purpose was simple: guarantee that even if Washington and Strategic Air Command were gone, the submarines would still get their orders. And it turns out that airborne platforms equipped with very low frequency, or VLF, transmitters became the solution. And the reason why this worked? Well, it comes down to the laws of physics. You see, unlike high or ultra-high frequencies, VLF signals can routinely travel thousands of miles, bending with the Earth's curvature and making use of the ionosphere to bounce those signals. These VLF signals can even penetrate seawater to reach submarines at depth. But there's an interesting phenomenon in the world of radio. The lower a frequency is, the longer of an antenna you'll need. Because of this, VLF required enormously long antennas, far too big for any fixed aircraft structure. Engineers solved this with an ingenious solution: a trailing wire antenna, miles long, unspooled behind the aircraft in flight at high altitudes. Now, this airborne antenna system worked beautifully, but it came with a price. The wire acted like a giant anchor, pulling at the aircraft and creating tremendous drag that threatened to destabilize it and cause a stall. To combat this, pilots needed to fly precise racetrack patterns, banking steeply while staying just above that critical stall speed. I'll never forget the first time I learned about this detail. I couldn't believe crews had to intentionally fly at the razor's edge just to keep the antenna in position. And this made it not just a communications mission, but a constant act and art of pure airmanship. Needless to say, flying the Tacamo mission was risky, but essential. It proved that even in the darkest scenario, the nuclear chain of command could still function. And it all began with an aircraft that no one expected to shoulder such a responsibility: the C-130 Hercules. The beginnings of Tacamo. The C-130 Hercules, or Herc, was never designed for nuclear command and control, at least not intentionally. A hugely successful airplane, it was envisioned as a cargo hauler, and it was built to land on rough strips and carry troops or supplies anywhere in the world. It even landed on aircraft carriers without a tailhook. Yet in the 1960s, this rugged transport became the unlikely foundation for Tacamo. Now, the modifications to turn the Herc into a Tacamo bird were brilliant. Reels of cable in the cargo bay could unspool up to 5 miles of trailing wire out the back of the aircraft. And once deployed, the wire transformed the C-130 into that massive VLF antenna, which, each time it was deployed, easily became the world's tallest radio tower. Now, there was also a shorter wire that deployed just behind the aircraft, and this was used mainly to transmit and pick up different frequencies. Now, keep in mind, a lot of what the Tacamo program does is classified. And if you've got anything further to add, unclassified of course, let me know in the comments below. But it wasn't just about flying with those wires hanging out behind the aircraft. Inside the aircraft, racks of early 1960s communication gear, think massive heat-soaked vacuum tube systems, filled the cargo bay, and they demanded constant attention, producing tremendous amounts of heat, and were prone to failure at seemingly the worst times. So crews had to manage not just the drag pulling at the airframe, but also those fragile electronics humming in the background, nursing them through missions that could last for hours. At the end of the day, those early Tacamo sorties weren't just about flying those precise patterns, they were also about keeping temperamental, oversized, and often very hot equipment alive long enough to get that message through. But despite these challenges, those crews mastered it. Submarines began receiving messages at depth, messages that could be the difference between war and restraint. The Hercules had successfully proven the concept. But those early EC-130s had limitations. Its space was cramped, its endurance wasn't ideal, and the demand for more advanced electronics was growing. By the 1980s, Tacamo needed a new platform that was larger, faster, and more capable. The replacement wouldn't come from another military transport. Instead, it would come from one of the pioneers of the jet age. Evolution of the mission. By the late Cold War, the Hercules had given Tacamo a foundation. But the mission had outgrown it, and as great as the Herc is, the Navy needed something that was faster, flew higher, and was more enduring. The answer came from an aircraft that many of us know as an airliner, the Boeing 707, or KC-135 as it's known in military use. Now, this aircraft was reborn as the E-6 Mercury, or Merc, for the Tacamo mission. On the outside, it still resembled a passenger jet. However, inside it was a hardened command center designed to keep the nuclear deterrent alive under any conditions. Compared to the Hercules, the Mercury was a revelation. The early model EC-130s could manage about 345 miles per hour and struggled above 19,000 feet with a full load. The E-6 cruised at nearly 600 miles per hour and could soar above 40,000 feet. This more than doubled its operating altitude and gave it far more flexibility in the combat airspace. At the same time, range and endurance were equally transformed. A Hercules could cover about 1,500 to 2,000 miles depending on its load. The Mercury could fly more than 6,000 nautical miles, remain on station for over 15 hours, and with aerial refueling, stretch that to nearly 3 full days aloft. That kind of reach meant Tacamo was no longer a regional asset. It became a truly global one. Now, the Mercury's larger airframe, combined with miniaturization from solid-state electronics, also meant more room for technology and crew. Where the early C-130s had carried racks of bulky, heat-soaked vacuum tube gear, the E-6 could host an entire battle staff. Multiple redundant communication suites filled its interior. Now, the trailing wire antenna remained, but it was now paired with powerful transmitters, satellite uplinks, high-frequency radios, and secure data links. In most cases, if one system failed, another one could take over. And unlike the Hercules, the Mercury wasn't limited to being just a radio relay. It could serve as an airborne command post in the event of a nuclear strike, transmitting emergency action messages not only to submarines, but also to missile silos and bomber wings. The end result was an aircraft that could fly faster, higher, and farther than its predecessor, while carrying vastly more capability. Pilots and crews understood the stakes. The Mercury wasn't just keeping the chain of command alive, it was ensuring that in the worst moment imaginable, the United States would still have a voice. But even the Mercury couldn't escape time. By the early 2000s, its systems were aging, and the airframes themselves were showing their years. The Tacamo mission was eternal, but their hardware wasn't. And so the Navy looked again to a familiar shape that would bring the mission full circle. Phoenix Rising. The E-6 Mercury had carried Tacamo through the jet age and the late Cold War. But even with its range and endurance, the aircraft was just simply showing its age. And the world had moved on from its Cold War roots. Cyber warfare was now a battlefield. Satellites were facing new threats, and the Navy needed something more survivable and flexible. The solution was both familiar and surprising. Tacamo returned to the airframe where it had all begun, the Hercules. But this wasn't an ordinary Hercules, it was the E-130J, a heavily modified version of the newest generation Super Hercules, and it was given the codename Phoenix. Now that name was no accident. The Phoenix, of course, symbolizes rebirth, and the Hercules that had once pioneered the mission was now rising again, rebuilt for the 21st century. The E-130J carries all the hallmarks of a modern Super Hercules. New turboprop engines with more thrust and greater fuel efficiency. A glass cockpit featuring digital avionics to reduce crew workload. Hardened systems designed to resist cyber and electronic warfare. And back in the crew compartment, a mission suite that's light years ahead of those tube-driven systems from the 1960s. Crews now had access to advanced encryption, secure data links, and multiple redundant communication systems. Now all of this is layered atop the one piece of technology that's never gone away. That trailing wire antenna. You just can't rewrite the laws of physics. It turns out that those very low frequency waves remain the only reliable way to reach submarines at depth. That means that wire still deploys, and those Phoenix pilots will still fly those precise patterns, balancing drag and control on the edge of performance. And the submarines, well, they can still get the message. At the end of the day, the Phoenix isn't just an upgrade in hardware, it's a statement that no matter how advanced warfare becomes, the United States will always keep a way to whisper that message when it matters most. Legacy and future. From those rugged beginnings in the EC-130 during the early years of the Cold War, to the sleek jet age of the Mercury, and now to the reborn Phoenix, the Tacamo mission has never been about glamour. It's been about survival. About ensuring that when every other system fails, the chain of command does not break. In many ways, you can think of it as the ultimate prepper scenario. And fittingly, the Phoenix codename captures the truth of Tacamo itself. Time and again, it has risen from each technological shift and each new threat. Throughout the life of the Tacamo program, every generation of aircraft has carried that same burden. To be the last whisper in the dark. The final message to reach a submarine captain before the world changes forever. And who knows? The future of Tacamo may bring unmanned platforms, new frequency bands, or technologies we haven't even imagined yet. But the principle will endure. Somewhere above the clouds, a crew, or maybe someday an autonomous system, will be flying patterns, drilling that wire into the void, ensuring that the message gets through. Personally, I hope the Tacamo mission always uses crewed aircraft. Because the legacy of Tacamo isn't just steel circuits and radio waves. It's the vigilance of those crews who stand ready, knowing that if the day ever comes, the world may depend on a single message that comes from a tower in the sky. And for those Tacamo crews, it could mean relaying the most consequential message in history. In some ways, the Tacamo program has always been one of the most secretive missions in military aviation, hiding in plain sight, and its importance really can't be overstated. The mission really is ensuring that we have a silent guardian of deterrence. Now, I want to hear from you. Which Tacamo aircraft do you think carried the most impressive load? Was it the pioneering Hercules, the far-reaching Mercury, or the reborn Phoenix? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this look at one of the strangest but most vital missions in aviation history, make sure to send a signal to the algorithm and hit that like button and subscribe for more military aviation deep dives. If you want to go above and beyond, then share this video with a fellow aviation enthusiast. And now it's time for something a little different. To honor the men and women who've flown and are flying this mission today, I've put together a music video called Phoenix Rising, a tribute to Tacamo. It's my way of saying thank you to the crews who have stood this watch. Let's take a look.
Thunder over oceans, shadows in the night. Steel birds are rising, ready for the fight. From the Herc to the Mercury, guardians of command. Voices of the nation carried through the land. Signals through the darkness never fade away. When the world is trembling, Tacamo will stay. Take charge and move out. Hear the call and roar. From the depths below to the skies we soar. The message will survive through the storm, no doubt. Take charge and move out. Silent wings of power, engines burning loud, linking hidden warriors, silent but proud. When the future's fragile, when the seconds count, they will hold the lifeline at a mount. Chains of steel and courage, born from past and pain. From the Cold War shadow, the mission still remains. Take charge and move out. Hear the calling roar. From the depths below to the skies we soar. The message will survive through the storm, no doubt. Take charge and move out. Carrying the cold through fire, fear and flame. Every call they answer, history knows their name. Hercules and Mercury, lightning in their veins. And now the Phoenix rises to carry on the chain. Take charge and move out. Voices never die. Through through the storm of thunder.